The final season of The Facts of Life is pretty widely known as a chaotic and messy ending to a sitcom that we had loved for years. There were a lot of reasons for the sudden drop of quality during season 9. We saw writers leave in droves, sets changing for no reason, and some desperate attempts to launch a spin-off. But for many of us, the arrival of this Australian exchange student, Pippa McKenna, played by actress Sherry Crenn, stands out as the biggest symbol of where things went wrong. For years, in fact, die-hard fans of the show have debated whether or not the character of Pippa actually managed to ruin the facts of life all by herself. Pippa haters eagerly point out that her arrival wasn't really about making the story better in any way. It was mostly about the producers trying to cash in on a very specific trend. Does anyone else remember how obsessed we in the United States became with Australia during the mid-'80s? It was a huge craze. We had stars like Mel Gibson and this lovely lady, Kylie Minogue, everywhere we looked. And Australian bands like Crowded House, In Excess, and Midnight Oil seemed to have taken over our radio airwaves. And then there was this little miniseries. Yep, The Thornbirds was a massive hit here on TV. The biggest influence, though, was probably Crocodile Dundee. That darn movie was so successful that the producers evidently decided adding an Australian character was the exact right move. Heck, they even introduced their own Crocodile Dundee type character. More on that in just a moment. Fans of Pippa say, and yes, there are some fans, that the goal was to give the show a fresh start. They brought Pippa in as a young girl to tie her to the roots of Eastland. These same fans insist that there was a plan, even if it wasn't a very good one. Because bringing in a new kid so late in the game usually feels like a desperation move. It led a lot of viewers, like myself, to look at Pippa as something of a Cousin Oliver type of character. For many fans, seeing Pippa, and to a certain extent Andy, played by Mackenzie Aston, show up was a gigantic warning sign that the end was near. And the way they introduced Pippa in the episode Up From Down Under just highlighted how messy the writing had become. Over the years, a lot of critics have pointed out that it would have made way more sense to introduce Pippa in the Facts of Life Down Under TV movie. Instead, she just appeared out of the blue in November as some random Aussie exchange student. There are those fans of the show who have speculated that the producers were worried that she might cost too much money if they had already established her as a regular in the movie first. Truthfully, I think that's giving them way too much credit. It all feels just like everyone associated with the Facts of Life was flying by the seat of their pants at the time. And to make matters worse, her story started with a lie. Pippa showed up pretending to be someone named Franny Newcomb and claimed that Mrs. Garrett had signed up to host her. In that episode, Jo was skeptical immediately. She didn't buy the story about a foreign girl just showing up, and she even questioned the accent. Gotta love Jo. It's hard to pull the wool over her eyes. And the fraud was confirmed when Pippa's dad, Kevin, showed up. He looked a lot like Crocodile Dundee, which, going back to all of the things that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'm sure was not a coincidence. Anyway, Crocodile Kevin revealed that Pippa was a runaway who took her friend Franny's place because she had a strong, burning desire to see America. Now, regarding this lying stuff, you'd think that Pippa might have learned her lesson, but nah, she kept lying even after that, and to make matters worse, she often dragged poor Andy into her schemes. They played hooky to go to New York, and then made up a sob story to a police officer about getting pickpocketed just to get a ride home. I think her worst lie was probably when she claimed that her dad was dying from a rare strain of the drongos. Her dad exposed that one pretty fast, since a drongo is just slang for a nincompoop. You know, I think because she was always acting like a fake, it was hard for the audience, definitely me, to trust and grow close to the character. The writing staff was having a crisis of its own during that 9th season. Paul Haggis ran a very strong season 8, but he was let go after Mrs. Garrett left. Other writers were hired and then fired quickly until Irma Kalish took over. She was an old-school writer known for great shows like Good Times and Maude, but even she kind of felt like the wrong choice here. She didn't have a track record of writing for young women, and it resulted in the main girls sometimes acting out of character. Because of the bad writing, the core cast was often mean to Pippa. When Tootie was away, the girls wouldn't even let Pippa sleep in her bed. They kept her on the couch just to make sure she knew she wasn't wanted. But when it all comes down to it, in the end, Pippa really wasn't there to join the main core cast. She was just a placeholder for the sequel, the spin-off. The producers were just too darn focused on spinning off the show, and the final episodes were almost entirely dedicated to setting up a show called Eastland Academy, where Blair would run the school. Pippa was clearly meant to be a regular on that new show. Oh, and just in case you're wondering, that is a very young Mayim Bialik. The Facts of Life was one of her very first roles. But getting back to the topic on hand, this misguided focus on creating some sort of spin-off meant that the actual series finale mostly ignored the cast that we cared about. 40 minutes of the final hour were spent setting up the new school and introducing new characters that we didn't know and would never grow to care about. And sadly, the writers had to write up both Joe and Tootie's storylines during the final few minutes of the finale. Here's the group picture that Joe's husband took to send off the series, and holy cow, looky there, Pippa is standing right there without any sort of logical explanation. Typical TV sitcom stuff. Not the good kind, the bad kind, mind you, but typical TV sitcom stuff. So did Pippa ruin the Facts of Life? Although The Simpsons' Professor Frink seems to have drawn his own conclusions here, I'd say that it's a hard question to answer definitively. What I am certain of, however, is that Pippa didn't destroy the show by herself. She was just the most obvious physical manifestation that the show was ending, that it had run its course. Her presence on the show came about because of a perfect storm of chasing trends, chaos behind the scenes, and the misguided priority of creating a spin-off. So instead of giving the girls that we grew to know and love over 9 seasons the send-off that they truly deserved, we got something that felt hastily slapped together. On the bright side, Sherry Kren, now known as Sherry Austin, decided to focus on music as a career. And you know what? I'll be darned if she isn't really quite good. Put Your Heart Into It is a really wonderful little song. Definitely worth checking out.
The Facts of Life starts a new night of laughs when Blair becomes the school headmaster.
This is not my idea of a fun puberty.
Then the 227 gang meets Lester's cousins. And how far will Golden Girl Rose go to catch a Superman? Then on Amen, Jack K guest stars as a man killer with an eye for the deacon.
Can I sweeten your coffee, Mr. Brown? Saturday.
In one of these, and in one of these. One of these lasts longer than a Duracell. Two rights, the extraordinary energizer. In one of these lasts longer than a Duracell. Two rights, the extraordinary energizer. It'll surprise ya.
Tests prove on average new Energizer lasts longer than any other battery, including Duracell. New Energizer.
You are special.
You didn't have to do it, but you did. So thank you very much for your support, for your support, for your support. Thank you very much for your support. Click on that thumbnail 'cause it's time to go.
Dave's got the classics, let the memories flow. TV shows and movies that we all hold so dear. On his YouTube channel, he's keeping memories near. Dave Sundstrom, bringing back the good stuff, oh yeah.